Good evening and welcome to Defense Diary. Today is, I believe, the 29th of September, 2025. I am Bob Motta. This is Defense Diaries podcast, the channel. And I am once again, as always, joined by my beautiful and brilliant co-host, Allie. What's up, girl?
Hey, babe. Hey, all.
So tonight we are going to be digging into a case that has very recently been thrust big time back into the news. And what we're talking about is obviously the yogurt shop murders, which were devastating and which really sent the city of Austin into a tailspin for now going on 3 decades. And Allie, what do you know about the case?
Well, we're talking about the 1991 Austin yogurt shop murders. On December 6th, 1991, four young girls, Amy Ayers, Jennifer and Sarah Harbison, and Eliza Thomas, were found murdered in an I can't believe it's yogurt shop in Austin, Texas. They were just teenagers working a closing shift and some of them visiting the others. The shop was set on fire. The crime scene was horrific. And as you said, I mean, this case haunted Austin for decades.
Yeah, and finally, last week, after 34 years, authorities announced, shockingly, that they have identified the actual killer, a man named Robert Brashers, who died in 1999 by his own hand. He had committed suicide. DNA, which is usually the case these days, was what was used, and IgG was used to finally solve one of Texas's most infamous cold cases.
And that should be the moment of closure, right? Finally, justice served, families finally getting answers. But here's where the story becomes a nightmare about our criminal justice system.
And that's because before Brashers was identified, two other men, Michael Scott and Robert Springsteen, were wrongfully convicted of these murders. Two innocent men whose lives were destroyed based on nothing more than coerced confessions.
And as you'll hear more, there were actually four guys that were the law enforcement were convinced were responsible for this, although only two got charged because of their confessions, everybody. So, and like I said, we'll get into this, but let me emphasize that there was no physical evidence linking Scott or Springsteen to the crime scene. No DNA, no fingerprints, no witness testimony, no forensic evidence of any kind. The only evidence used to convict them were confessions that were coerced after hours of interrogation. Confessions using that Reid technique that most of our viewers know all about. Um, they were confessions that these young men, exhausted and pressures, implicated each other in a crime they didn't commit. And importantly, this was before the Supreme Court had ruled on the Crawford case, which requires that everyone have the right to cross-examine their accusers. So in each of those trials, they were able to get in the confessions, but no cross-examination, no question were asked of the actual witness.
Yeah, I mean, that was the grounds for why the convictions were overturned. And I want to be clear, Michael Scott at the time was 16 years old when he was interrogated. 16. Think about that. And the confessions didn't even match the physical evidence at the scene or each other. So, meaning that Scott and Springsteen's confessions weren't coinciding with one another. Factually, they were giving different accounts. But oddly enough, terrifyingly enough, those confessions were enough to convince juries, and both men were convicted.
Yeah. And the convictions were eventually overturned. I think back in 2006 or 7. And I think it was Michael Scott wasn't released. He was the later of the two to actually get released. I think it was 2009. And as we stated, that was based on a constitutional error in admitting these confessions with no opportunity to cross-examine the so-called witness. But here's the kicker: neither man was fully exonerated. So their lives, and really all four of their lives, were in limbo throughout all of this. Their names still associated with one of the most heinous crimes in Texas history, even though we now know with certainty they did not do it.
Right. And, the irony of these types of cases is always the concept of justice is slippery, right? And I think if you watch our channel with any kind of frequency, you know that our position, which is everybody's position, or at least it should be, that justice is not served on any case if the wrong person has been convicted of a crime. The families of the victims have not gotten justice. The victims themselves have not gotten justice. The defendant who was convicted sure the hell didn't get justice. And you have this occurring in our country far more than I think the average citizen is aware of. And this case is so shocking to me, and it's so profound because it continues to shine a light on just how easy it is to get a conviction in a case like this. And
Yep.
when you look at the fact that there was simply little to no evidence, and they were able to get two different juries to convict these two men,
Right, because they were tried separately.
it should terrify you. It's a scary, scary proposition.
And before you bring on the guests, babe, I'd like to just play. There was a press conference today where they rolled out all this information. I just want to play a quick 1 minute so anyone out there can hear what the Texas, the Austin District Attorney. Wait, I'm not sure if that's what I think it's actually Travis County, right?
Yeah.
District Attorney had to say about where the case stood today. Is now a good time?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Here we go.
Still investigative steps that are underway.
Ah,
That being said,
you know what? The sound on this is horrible. Just go ahead, introduce them, and I'll play it once we get our guests on stage.
Okay. All right. So very, very excited. Very, very excited about tonight's guest. And one of our ride or dies. You know him, you love him. Travis Williamson, a wonderful attorney, incredibly bright man, friend of the show.
Shop in North Austin.
Oh, hello. Are you going to do that while I'm introducing them?
Oh, I didn't realize I did that. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I thought
we're
I
still on screen. So at any rate,
Tech
Travis,
wizardry, everybody. Tech wizardry.
So Travis was kind enough to be able to put this entire thing together for us yesterday. We reached out and we're like, hey man, because this is down in his neck of the woods. We're like, can you help us out? We want to do a live on this. And Travis, of course, was like, absolutely. And needless to say, he made it happen. So without further ado, let me bring on our two guests because I'm going to let Travis introduce our very, very special guest. Travis, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing very, very well. Thanks for having me. And
Well, thank you for all your help.
Your show, defense attorneys talking about trials, reporting on trials, true crime. I really wouldn't have trusted this with anybody else because you all know what it's like to try a serious death penalty case. Yeah. You grew up in a house where your dad defended John Wayne Gacy and to his core thought he deserved a defense, a thorough defense. So I wouldn't have trusted this with anybody else.
Well, we appreciate it, that. Travis, really.
All right, appreciate it. All right, are you ready to introduce your friend and our special guest?
Yeah, be my honor. You want to pop him on, and I'll tell
bring him
everybody
on.
about him. He can just
Bring him on.
sit there.
There he is.
Hi guys, how are you?
We are.
So,
we fixed this? There we go.
Bob, Ali, I'd like to introduce you to Carlos Garcia, my friend. I'm honored to call him my friend and colleague. And Carlos was the lead counsel for the defense of Michael Scott. It's featured prominently in that 4-part HBO series and every other thing that's covered it, including 4 episodes of 48 Hours. I guess as we go through this, probably need a 5th episode of the HBO series, and you're going to need Aaron to come out for a 5th time. But you could talk to Carlos about that. But let me just tell you 2 minutes about Carlos. Rather than, I could go through all of his trials and his accomplishments, the fact that he's one of that rare attorney that have a not guilty in a death penalty case. But I kind of like to talk about my friends and their background and kind of what makes them up. But Carlos is a consummate professional. You know, he's, I'd say, a bright spot in the world of law, and his counsel is widely sought, not just in Austin, but from Brownsville to Lubbock, from El Paso to Huntsville. If you're not familiar with Texas, that's a long, long way. He teaches all over the state. He's a giant in the defense community here in Austin. And in Texas, where we have the death penalty and we actually carry it out. We had one last week and another one scheduled for next week. In a state where we actually carry out the death penalty, he's a giant in that community. He's in the death penalty defender crowd. And there's not too many in there, and there's fewer that have a not guilty. Most of the time, you're just fighting to get somebody life, which in Texas is either death or life without parole. That's the 2 choices the jury has. With no exceptions, I've always seen him. He believes and practices with the principle that every person deserves a thorough defense under the Constitution. And he does everything he possibly can, and you can see it in the pleadings in this case, to make sure that that happens with no exceptions. And he's defended some, what a lot of people would say are undesirable people. And he's unapologetic about it in his belief. It's inspiring all over the courthouse, even if you don't do death penalty cases. He respects the law. What do I mean? He's ethical. He's one of those rare lawyers that's distinguished himself and his character by the way he practices. Think about that for a minute, given some of the trials you all have covered and certain attorneys in those trials and the way they practice. So one last thing before I turn my good friend over to you all. Carlos graduated from law school a couple of years after I did, about 88, I think, from the University of Texas, which is perennially a top 10 law school, along with University of Chicago and Northwestern and University of Pennsylvania, Ali and Bob. But his undergrad was in teaching. He has a degree in teaching. He can tell you about that. I don't know if he actually ever taught, but
I did.
He's a teacher, and I don't know, Bob or Ali, if you had a teacher in high school that taught trig or physics or calculus or chemistry, a difficult subject, but just made it so easy. That's Carlos. And why is that a gift? what are you doing with 12 people in a box that are captive for 8 weeks? Well, you try and explain why on earth someone would confess to something that could put them on death row if you didn't really do it. And that's what we do. We teach if you're a good trial lawyer, and he's so gifted. He puts the work in. So when he was running with this death penalty crowd, he went off to learn the new Colorado method of jury selection. And he came back, and Carlos, always willing to share with lawyers in the courtroom. The demand, he'd never be able to practice law if he answered questions individually. I don't know how he got from one courtroom to the other, because people are going up to him, hey, I got this case. But so he puts on this seminar after he gets back. He said, okay, this is the Colorado method. And Bob and Allie, you know, the trick with jury selection is you can't ask somebody if your defendant is Black or Hispanic. Are you prejudiced against Mexicans? Are you a racist? Because with rare exceptions, no one's going to shame themselves into admitting that.
Right.
So you have to be able to ask questions that they don't tip their hand. They don't know where you're going. And also, it can't be so much, you don't want the state to go, oh my God, that's their dream juror. We need to get rid of them one way or another. Challenge for cause or preemptory. So that's kind of what the Colorado method is. So he gets back and he's explaining it. So he shows everything that they taught him. And then he said, I've been kind of playing around with this. And, for this case I got coming up, this is what I did. And it's like he took calculus and came up with a new math. And he took algebra and came out with calculus, and
tweaked it.
No exaggeration. He's just
I
so
stole
gifted.
all of it, man. I stole all of it.
No, it's true. He forgot that I've watched the evolution of those seminars. 25 years, my friend, we've been knowing each other. But anyway, it's my honor and privilege to turn you over to my other friends, Bob and Allie, and tell us about this case. Carlos, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's our
pleasure.
pleasure.
So whatever y'all want to know, I'll answer as best as I can.
All right. So before we get into it, because I want to ask you about the press conference today, and now I'm going to play what I tried to play for you guys a moment ago. I've got some better sound here of it. So it's real quick.
All right. I'll pull Travis down.
All right, Travis, thank you very much.
We love you.
All right. This is the district attorney speaking on the case.
Still investigative steps that are underway. That being said, the overwhelming weight of the evidence points to the guilt of one man and to the innocence of four. The evidence points to the guilt of Robert Eugene Brashers and to the innocence of Maurice Pierce, Michael Scott, Robert Springsteen IV, and Forrest Wellborn. If the conclusions of that investigation are confirmed, the Travis County District Attorney's Office will take responsibility for our role in prosecuting these men, in sending one to death row and one to serve life in prison. If the conclusions of APD's investigation are confirmed, as it appears that they will be, I will say I am sorry, though I know that that will never be enough. We will take any necessary steps to ensure that they can move forward with their lives. So much time has.
So that's the small clip that I wanted to play because it's a long press conference. There was a lot to it. Let me start with, why don't you, and I let me just explain to the people why I decided to play that portion of it, because it's important for me to know, that our viewers know, because a lot of times people are like, okay, well, DNA of someone else, that doesn't mean that these guys weren't involved. This doesn't necessarily prove they're innocent. They gave in a confession. So this is such an important case, because you've got confessions from two people, and now you've got the law, the not only the science, but law enforcement and the district's attorney saying this new evidence proves the innocence of 4 and the guilt of 1. So what did you think of the press conference? And maybe tell us a little bit about the evidence that they found, and how it does prove the innocence of 4.
Sure. So we know from back in 2008 that the district attorney had been testing material from the vaginal swabs of the victims. At the time, we were back in court getting ready for a retrial. At that time, for Michael Scott, a death was no longer on the table, because we got life the time before that. And so we find out in 2008 in March, and I'll never forget, because we had been preparing and night and day for over a year. And a lot of us we lost our practice, everything, because we were just focused on this one case. But we got a call, I'll never forget, it was an afternoon, it was March or so. And we got a call from the judge to come over to the courthouse. They wanted to see us. So, we all went, myself, Dexter Guilford, Jim Sawyer, Alexandra Gauthier, Tony Diaz. We all went over there. So I'll never forget, because when the elevator door opened, out comes the parents of Amy Ayers. They're coming out from the elevators, like, okay, well, something's up. So we went up, and we get up there only to have the assistant DA there tell us, hey, listen, we've been doing this testing, and we found a full profile, a YSDR profile. It was not nuclear DNA, it was YSDR. And they found this full profile in one of these swabs from Amy Ayers.
Right. And the YSTR is the male chromosome, its own little profile of just that one chromosome, and it follows men down their familial line.
So, if I'm the person who committed the crime, and they're doing that kind of testing, then it's either me or my brother or my other brother or my other brother, that kind of thing. And so that's the kind of testing that we're doing, because there was so little material left, and it had degraded and other things. And so that's when we found out. So as a result, apparently over the years, what I have learned over time, we all practice and we get DNA cases, is that you need less and less and less material now.
Right.
And so in 2018,
go back to where you were getting ready for this trial. You go upstairs.
Yes. So, the DA is telling us, hey, we found this. It's unknown. It doesn't match your guys. So we know it's not them. But we're going to continue on to a trial. And so in June, as we're getting ready to go pick a jury in a couple of weeks, they tell us they're going to announce not ready and let them out on bond. So that happens.
So I remember from the series, the press release at that time, and I'm not sure if the woman who spoke was the assistant district attorney handling the case or the district attorney of the county, but she was making it damn well clear at that time. She knew that the DNA excluded each one of the 4 guys, right?
Yes.
And then, but she stood on screen and said, "We still think it's them, and the evidence still points to their guilt, but we've got to figure out who this other guy is before we go to trial."
Well, and the interesting thing was that I remember sometime after that happened, it was during the summer of 2000, I guess it was 2009. We're there, and it's now a year later, and we continue on, right, prepping for our trial. And so in 2009, in June, is when they were ready to go, and they said, no, we're not ready to go. So they're going to let them out on bond. And I'll never forget, because I ran into one of the interrogators for Michael Scott, one of John Hardesty. And I remember I saw Hardesty, is like, he said, hey, hi to me and so on. And he goes, yeah, we think we know who that fifth person was. Like in their minds, these guys, this is already 2009. And in their minds, it's like, it's these 4 plus 1.
Right.
It's these 4 plus 1. And that was the mentality as late as 2009.
Right. And you see that all the time. I was telling Bob, you know, I'm just surprised. I was anxious to watch the press release because I'm like, well, this is shocking that they're not just saying they've identified the fifth. I'm like, I can't believe it. I'm going to fall over, and we'll get into that as we go down. But go ahead, continue.
So that's what happened. And then with Brasher, I think in 2018 they exhumed his body. So I suspect that's when they got more of his DNA, and they were able to run, and they started getting hits here and there. And the detective did a good job of explaining the process by which, when he got on the case 2-3 years ago, of what he did to get some of these things tested. And apparently they found Brasher matched, you know, what was found in Amy, and also matched DNA from the other girls that was found in the other girls. So they've got, that's who they believe did it.
All right. Well, let's go backwards, babe. Why don't you start us off?
All right. But before we do that, Carlos, I want you to just try to explain from an attorney's perspective, when you have them come back, when you have multiple items from the scene, including a vaginal swab and a round that was found in a drain, they're able to test it. They're able to draw and create 2 YSTR profiles. And it's clearly not your guy. It's absolutely not your guy. And what is that feeling like for an attorney when you have that discussion with the DA or the assistant DA, whoever you're dealing with, and those words come out of their mouths? Oh, well, we think we know who the fifth guy is, where it becomes evident to you immediately, okay, it looks like they're going to still persist on this thing that my guy is one of the people. Like, what is running through your mind? Try to kind of articulate it. We do it a lot here, but I'd love to hear from you kind of what was going through your mind, if you can remember when those words were said to you.
I mean, I remember one of the prosecutors said, well, it was almost one of your guys because they were off by some numbers, right? It's like, no, dude, that's not the way it works.
Right. It was almost. Well, we're all almost. I mean, we're
almost. It just doesn't work that way. So that told us that they misunderstood the science. They didn't understand the science.
Yeah.
But I think the bigger problem, the bigger issue that I've seen throughout, and not just in this one case, but in other cases that we've tried, is just the bias. You know, the cognitive bias, the fact that, you know, they get this tunnel vision that they think they've got the right person. And I'm certain you guys have seen it too, where once they do that, that's all they focus on, and they exclude anything that doesn't fit, you know? And so in this case, that was all over the place. It started with a man named Paul Johnson. And I think he was in one of the task forces like in 1996 or 97. And then that task force dissolved because they really couldn't do much. And he kind of took it upon himself to reorganize the case. So he's the one that eventually by 1999, he formed this new task force that was going to now focus on several people. The 4, you know, Pierce and Wellborn and Scott and Springsteen. And then there was another person, and I can't remember his full name. They were going to focus on the 4 plus this other person, and they were unrelated. And they were thinking the other person might be a witness. And I want to say they thought Maurice was involved, and the other 3 might know something. That was kind of their working theory at the time. And where this was coming from, just so we're clear, because I read it somewhere with Johnson in one of his reports somewhere. Police have this idea that you have your killer in your investigation, you just missed him. That like 3 out of 4 times your killer was there all along, you just missed him. So here they had, I forget at the time, 8,000 pages of reports and incident reports that have been called in. So, you know, my thought was, okay, he thinks that he's got his killers are somewhere in here. right? Now I'll tell you right now, I did a search because everything's PDF'd. So I did a search of all, 8, 9, 10,000 pages. That name never came up. So he was not in there, right? But that's how they focused on these guys, and the reason they focused on them is because back in 91, and this is kind of where it gets a bit confusing. Back in 91, this happened on a Friday, December 6, 1990 was a Friday. And it happened in an area where there's like a mall real close, like a block or two away. So there's kids it's all high school kids going to the mall in the evening. And so this fire erupts and there's fire trucks, and all our guys, just like everyone else, remembers seeing the fire trucks. And then they split off. Some of them went to an entertainment area called 6th Street here in Austin. Another one went to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, right? And that was the end of that, right? And so a week later, Maurice Pierce goes to that same mall, but he's got this .22 pistol that he's got. And well, a .22 was what was used to kill these girls, at least 3 of them. The fourth one, Amy, was shot both with a .22 and a .380, which is the one they've matched up now that they found in the drain.
To Robert Brashers.
Right. And so a week later, he gets, Pierce, it's a Saturday night. It's now maybe the 15th or so. He gets arrested with a .22, and immediately the cops pick him up, take him, interview him. And he's interviewed by a notorious guy named Hector Polanco, who was a detective known for getting false confessions. So we don't know because he didn't record it, right? But from 11 o'clock at night till about 5 in the morning, Polanco's with this kid. Then he comes out and said, okay, you can go ahead and talk to him now. He's given me information about the murders. And the kid apparently said words to the Wellborn borrowed my gun, and he said he did it. So they decide to then wire him up, and they go, that's later on that afternoon, they go find Forrest Wellborn, and Pierce is now wired up. Now, Pierce at the time was 15. Wellborn, I think, was 16.
Now, can you taking us to Pierce? No. He didn't just say this, admit this right away. There was the Reid technique was used on him as well, right?
Who knows? But the point is that this kid is now saying things. He's not saying he did it. He's saying my friend borrowed my gun and said he was going to go do whatever, go do something. And so when they wire him up and they go confront Wellborn, it's clear that Wellborn doesn't know what he's talking about. Right. And so John Jones is kind of the lost hero in this case, because John Jones did everything by the book.
The first investigator.
Yes. The one that was he was the one called out. He did everything by the book, and he was thrown off to the side when he couldn't solve it.
Yep.
Right. That's what happened to him. But nonetheless, he figures out, okay, this kid's had nothing to do with it. Now, they did interview Springsteen and Scott, and they both kind of said the same thing. It's like, we saw the fire trucks. We went to 6th Street. Springsteen said he went to go see the Rocky Horror Picture Show at that same mall. And that becomes crucial later on in the interrogations 8 years later. That fact becomes crucial because of what they did to him. But that was kind of it. But so they became suspects. The gun was excluded eventually with the testing, but Paul Johnson never forgot those 4. And he kind of picked on them in 97, 98, and they became his target.
Now, can you walk us through, I don't know, before we get to you walking us through the interrogation tactics used on Michael, how about you walk us through the crime scene, and what evidence they did and didn't have?
Yeah. And just for those that were late, our guest tonight is attorney Carlos Garcia, who represents Michael Scott, who was one of the wrongfully convicted people associated with the yogurt shop murders back in 1991. And it's been a very, very long fight for Carlos and his client in order to try to get his client fully exonerated, which as we sit here today, despite having identified the actual killer, he still is not fully exonerated. We hope that's coming in the very near future, but this has been quite a battle, So that's who our guest is.
Now, is the chart up there on the screen?
Oh, here you go. There it is. And you can blow that up on your end, I think.
Yeah, it's as big as I can get it on my screen.
All right, perfect.
So I'm gonna make it just a tad smaller. All right. So the time on this one, this is to scale. This is something that I did. Now let me back up a bit. I do want to say something that's important to me. When these boys were arrested in 1999, there was one lawyer who believed they were innocent, and his name was Tony Diaz. All right. Tony Diaz believed these kids were innocent. I don't know about the other ones, but Tony Diaz was like, these kids didn't do it. And I will tell you right now, I didn't get appointed till like 2 years later because the law changed in Texas and they had to have death penalty qualified lawyers, and that's why they brought me in. My first objective was to plead out. It's like, okay, what can I do to convince my client to plead? Because you don't want to go to trial on a death penalty case.
And you had what you thought was a confession.
Yeah, I've got a confession. Hey, but so before I go through this diagram that you're seeing, I will tell you that I looked at the confession. This is what it looks like. Okay. And I started reading this thing.
Oh, we can't see that. Let's see.
You see it? I don't, as long as you kind of.
No, Carlos, when you see on your screen, when on the sharing screen, you can switch to a different tab. Do you see that?
Oh, I see. Okay, well, I won't worry. But the point is that this was like an 8-page confession. What I did not know was that this was a result of 5 days of interrogation, right? And so I remember starting to read this thing, and it's like I'm reading, and it gets disgusting at some point. It's like I couldn't read it. I had to stop, right? And Tony and Dexter Guilford are both telling me, hey, our guy didn't do it, man. This guy didn't do it. It's like, come on, guys, who confesses, right? And so I put it away for about 30 days, came back to it. And this time I was like, okay, I'm going to read this thing. Well, I start reading, and it's like, oh, wait a minute. This kid is not describing that crime. Like, it doesn't match, right? This is not what happened. For example, on the screen, if you look to the right, to the left at the bottom, is this locked office, right? Okay, that office was locked. Michael Scott is talking about going into the safe, which is that great looking thing right here. That's the safe in the floor. So Michael Scott is describing something that did not occur. Like, that's impossible. They have him draw the yogurt shop from his recollection. It looks nothing like this, nothing like this. And what you're looking at here, this black line, I don't know if you can see when I move the cursor, but
we're not seeing it. We should, if you're doing it from the actual screen that you shared.
Yeah, but you can see the sharing, right?
Yes.
Yes.
We see what you see. We see.
So here's what I'm going to show you first. So this is the front.
All right. I think it's, for some reason, it's not changing the screen for us.
Is that all you see now?
Here, switch back to you look at the StreamYard, and you can see what we see.
Okay. Oh, I see. Yeah, I see that you don't, it doesn't switch. Either way.
But at the top of your screen, when you're back on your PDF screen at the very top, it should say share this screen instead.
Or share this tab.
Share this tab, maybe.
I'm looking for it, but I can't find it. So I didn't want to waste time.
No,
but either way, but I'll explain.
I'd like you to pull up Michael's interpretation or his description of the yogurt shop, even if we have to wait for a second for you to do it, because I think
let me stop sharing and then I'll put it
stop
up.
sharing and then do it again. Perfect.
Right. So we're going to do that one. And then we'll share again.
Perfect. There it is.
There we go.
There you go. So this is Michael during those 5 days. Actually, he drew this one on the first day of interrogation, which is 9/9/99. And that's what he's drawing. So kind of the entrance is at the bottom. From the bottom of the page, that's supposed to be the entrance to the yogurt shop. Where it says REC, that's supposed to be the register.
Wow.
1, 2, 3, 4 are the girls. And then he puts Rob where supposedly Rob Springsteen is at. And then he describes a hallway, which does not exist, going towards the back. But essentially, he puts up the entire action. He puts it at the front of this place, at the front of this place. So this is totally just wrong.
When you say the front, it's like where the customers are.
Right, where the booths are, where they sell the ice cream and the yogurt and all that kind of stuff. So this looks like nothing like that scene, right? And so on the other one, so I'll stop sharing and I'll put the other one.
Carlos is already more proficient with StreamYard than I am.
All right, let's go. Window. All right. So this is from left to right. This is what the yogurt shop looks like. The door is that area right there at the very bottom left. That's the door. And I can't point to it because I don't have a little deal, but that's the door. And then you can see the 3 tables in the middle, and the chairs were already put up. So this diagram shows what the police found.
And the chairs were put up, meaning at the end of the day, the girls were cleaning.
Yes, they had put them up. And so the last booth on the right up on top did not have chairs on it. And later on, we noticed in 2007 that the napkin dispenser was not filled with that. And so we always thought, okay, that's where the killers were. But they're telling us it was 1 killer, not 2, and that this guy did not have an accomplice or didn't use an accomplice. So we don't know. I take them at their word that what they're saying is correct. But that was our theory, our working theory. So now I'm going to go to the back.
And again, that would be that the killer, and go ahead, you can switch out the picture while the killer waited in the store eating his yogurt or doing whatever until everyone else left and he was alone.
Yeah, and the witnesses that were there, the last 2 witnesses, they were seated at one of these booths. And so the lady says, behind me were 2 guys and they weren't eating anything. So they would have been in the last booth to the top right. Right? And so that's what she's describing. And we know they're the last witnesses because what they bought is reflected in the cash register roll. So that's them.
But
no one else bought anything after, right?
And they paid with cash, so they weren't able to be tracked down, right?
Right. And so they left, and according to them, there's 2 people left there. And that's why we've always had the working theory that those 2 people never came back and gave a statement, so those are your killers.
Right.
But no, be that as it may, I'm going to show you now the backside. And
while Carlos is pulling that up, babe, why don't you tell the people a little bit about the Robert Brasher? Okay. He's been tied already to how many murders?
Oh, to be quite honest, I didn't want to read any of his stuff.
Okay. Do you remember?
No, but I can't remember. He had one I think in 85.
I think it was 6 to 8 other murders, or they've got him tied to 6 and they're working on 2 others. But either way, they have identified the person as a serial killer who has an MO very similar to this. So Go ahead, let us know what we're looking at.
And the MO, well, so we don't get off of that. The MO was the detective said that in one of the cases that he tied up 4 women or 4 girls, whatever it was, with their underwear and clothes and whatnot. And so he alone was able to control, as many as 4 people. And so
because
set a fire. He set a fire. It's just kind of very similar things to what we see here.
Yeah.
And he assaulted those girls, but didn't murder them. So they were alive to say he was alone.
I don't know.
That's what they did mention in the press conference.
So here, what you're looking at from left to right, that big old circle, that's the cash register. And there was money underneath. There was a bag of money. It was like, I think the change money, like a blue bank bag. And it had, I forget how much money in it, but it was where they made change from. And then these squares right there, just past the counter, that's where they kept, I think, the yogurt. They had the toppings right there. So this is still the front of the room. But then you can see the very first black line that goes up and down. That's the wall between the front and the back room. Okay. And so in the back room, you can see this is after the fire is extinguished, like 11:59 p.m. Amy Ayers was the one that's away from the other three. She was kind of in a strange position. There was a grate right under her, a little drain, and that's where they found the casing. And then the other three girls, the very first one on top was Jennifer, and then her sister Sarah, and then Eliza Thomas. And what we had figured, like the orange dot, that's where they found clothing. Right, the office was locked. There were some trash bags out the back, so we really don't know. The person went out the back because the front was locked with a key in it. So the person went out the back. The question now becomes, how did he get in there? I suspect that he might have knocked at the back door and they opened it. Who knows? But the point is, the position of the bodies of not Jennifer, she's the one closest to the shelves. That's where the fire started. It was on the shelves, not on the bodies of the girls.
And that was one of the inconsistencies in Michael Scott's statement, or no?
Yes. So with Mike Scott, to be able to explain it, he spent all of Thursday 99 with them from 9 o'clock in the morning till I think 10 at night, with breaks nonetheless. And then he went Friday. He spent like 4 or 5 hours with them on Friday. They skipped Saturday, and then they spent time with him on Sunday. More recordings, trying to look for a gun, or supposedly he threw it. And then on Monday is when they took the written statement from him, the one that I didn't have a chance to put up. So that's kind of the sequence, but all the damage happens to Michael. It happens from about 11:30 a.m. on Thursday till 1:30. That's when he first begins to confabulate. And it's the result of a threat that they make that was so subtle we didn't catch it. We didn't catch it in 2002. We didn't catch it until we were prepping for trial the second time. So
what was that?
So what they did with Michael Scott, and this was part of their plan. So I'm going to back up and give you context. So Paul Johnson and Ron Latta were going to run this task force and do this investigation. And so they gathered 4 or 5 more detectives and said, here's our plan. We're going to go talk to all these people. Our plan is, if they don't cooperate, we're going to tell them that we're going to take him to the grand jury, that's what they're risking, right? And so they kind of followed that plan. But they spoke to, I think, Forrest Wellborn first, and nothing much happened there. Then they talked to Michael. With Michael, he starts at 9:15, and they begin to accuse him at 11:39. They first accuse him. I'm trying to remember what they said to him. I'll tell you what they said. So they said, "Hey, man, you're just relax. You're real wound up." He wasn't wound up, right? We're talking to you as a friend, but you know things you're not telling us. And Scott, to all this time, had been like, I saw the fire trucks. That's what I remember, right? And they're telling him, you're very nervous. I want to ask you it again because it's really important. All right. But I asked you outside, you're scared of something. What are you scared of? So they begin to use these themes that the Reid technique says to use, right? This thematic. And it's okay, man. Are you scared of having knowledge about something you haven't revealed at this point? And his response is, guys, I've told you all everything I can remember about that night. If I had more information, I would give it to you. I'm sorry if I seem wound up. So that's kind of the beginning of the accusatory Reid technique where you accuse. That's where it starts. Well, about 5 minutes later, they do the following. This is like 11:44 a.m. And he says to him, he goes, I'm scared that I'm not answering the questions you want answered, right? And hey, they tell him, no. That's the cardinal rule. You can't tell us what we want to hear. But the truth is, we know what the truth is. Ron and I know what the truth is. He's talking about Ron Latta. This is John Hardesty and Ron Latta. And Ron Latta was the main guy, not John Hardesty. It was Ron Latta.
And that's the one you said has a history of.
No, that other guy's gone by that.
Okay,
He's not
sorry.
in the picture. So here's what they tell him. Myself and Ron have a pretty good idea of what the truth is. Okay. And you're involved in that truth, and you know you are, Michael. All right. We're trying to do this very low key, but this thing is snowballing, man. You know what it means? No, it means grand jury. Do you know what a grand jury is? Oh, I think I have an idea. And so they ask you a bunch of questions, and here's what they tell them. They're going to ask you lots of questions. You know a lot of facts about the case. We know that you know certain things you're not telling us about this case. You can tell us anything you want. There's not a lot we can do. But when it comes to the grand jury, and the grand jury knows those facts, and we give them those facts, and they ask you questions, and you're being deceptive, and you're not upfront with them, that's a crime. You'll go to jail for that. So here's it was so subtle that we just missed it.
Because you're focusing more on other aspects of the question.
Yeah, we just missed it. Like it took me 1.5 years to dissect this interrogation. It took me 18 months the second time around, because I took the interrogation that time. But think about what's going on through Michael Scott's mind. Put yourself in his place, in his shoes. The cops just told you that you're involved in this horrific crime. They know you're involved. They've talked to everyone else. They know the details. They know what happened. They're going to go tell the grand jury all this information of your involvement. So when Michael Scott walks into that grand jury room, he's only got one option. His only option is to say, I was involved. Because if he says anything different, then he goes to jail.
Right.
That's the threat.
Right.
The Reid technique says, do not do threats of inevitable consequences. That is a threat of an inevitable consequence.
Right.
That's what that is.
Being levied against a 15-year-old kid.
No, he wasn't 15.
No, not at that point. Right.
No, he's
Is this in later? Is this
Right,
later
this
on
is in
when they
99.
reinvestigated? Okay.
This is in 99 when they've had a plan. Now they're going to go after these 4 kids and see what they know. Scott, at the time of the crime, Scott was 18. Springsteen was 17. And the other 2, I think, were 16 and 15. So they were juveniles. And so that's why Springsteen got the death penalty, but it was commuted when Roper v. Simmons came out, saying that the Supreme Court said, hey, you can't kill 17-year-olds. So his death sentence was commuted to life. Mike got life to begin with. So we did okay there, right? But he was 18 at the time that this crime happened. But anyway, they begin to use this threat of grand jury, and it would take me some time to show you, but every time they wanted something from him, it was time to go to the grand jury. And that's what broke them. And you see the pattern. You see where it says grand jury, grand jury, grand jury, and he'll say something.
Wow.
The other thing that you see in this interrogation is they fed him all these facts over and over and over again. They fed him that there was 2 guns. They ended up feeding him the calibers. At one point, at exactly 4:20 in the afternoon, he's now put himself inside the yogurt shop, right? It's been now 5 hours since what I just told you happened. Well, Hardesty comes back and says, hey, Mike, we were outside smoking and you said something about you thought that they had been tied up. What were they tied up with? Now listen to what I just said. Hardesty says, you were telling me that you think they were tied up. What were they tied up with? So Hardesty makes the jump from a speculation to a fact, right? And so then Michael Scott, we've got the transcripts. He starts to say stuff like, oh, I think it was duct tape. No, it wasn't duct tape, Mike. You know that's not true. Come on, man. You're just lying to us now.
Wow.
I think it was apron strings. No, not apron strings. You know that's not. Electrical cord. No. Maybe I guess it was their underwear, their socks. There you go. You got it. That's how how they fed stuff.
And I watching back, I know we only saw portions of it in the documentary, but I was commenting to Bobby, and as I watching it, just really looked like Mike was trying to be helpful, trying to recreate the memories based on the information that they're saying, and then at least the way they show it, he was like, "Oh no, I think I killed somebody."
Yes. That was it. He was confabulating. And then, so they fed him facts, which Reid says, don't do that, right? Number 2, don't threaten people with inevitable consequences. Well, they do that. They break that rule too. And then the third, probably the most damaging thing they do to him is they tell him, well, he says, I'll take a polygraph. Because I wasn't there, right? They bring a polygraph guy in. He's not there. He is the polygraph examiner. He's just another interrogator. And so this guy tells them, hey, man, your brain, you have something, your mind is like a VCR. And you have something called revivification. And that means that your mind has recorded every instant you've ever seen. And it's all there. You're just blocking it or suppressing it. Reid says, don't suggest a theory of memory that's false. Because now you got this poor kid all scared because he's going to jail if he doesn't say he's involved. They've already started to tell him all the details of the crime. And now they're telling him he's suppressing it. So what is he trying to do? Remember.
Right.
And he spends the next 4 or 5 days trying to remember. The 7-page document that I read is the product of all that.
Yeah.
That's the product. That's the end product. It's essentially the theory of the investigators as to what happened in that crime. That's what's in there, right? For me, when I started reading all this, it's like, okay, guys, I told Dexter and Tony, yeah, you guys are right. This guy didn't do it, right?
And you tried to put in a memory expert at trial. How did that go? And what was your expert going to testify to?
We did. Our memory expert testified as to how memories are formed, which is pretty standard insofar as the fact that our memories can change and they can be tampered with, and we might believe something happened that did not happen, but we believe it, right? So memory is just so malleable. The expert we wanted to put on with Richard Leo was for false confessions.
Oh, right. Sorry. And were you able to?
Right. And when we did I want to say we did a Daubert hearing for him, the judge put certain regulations saying, well, he can't do this, that, or the other. So we decided not to put him on.
Because basically your hands were tied. He wasn't going to be able to do it.
Yes, but I'll say this. 6, 7 years later, when we're prepping, I went back and I looked at the judge's order. And he had like 5 stipulations of what he could do. So my plan was going to be, okay, we're going to use those 5 things that you said we could talk about. We're going to shove it up your ass. because we could work with what he had told us, but we were so stressed out at trial that our decision at that point was, let's not put him on because we can't do what we need to do. And that's just a function of trial and being stressed out and whatnot. But what the judge, the limits he said we could have used, we just had to rethink it.
How long was the trial?
Oh my God.
Are we done with this?
No, I can tell you that you mean the crime scene?
Yeah.
So let me explain the crime scene just a little bit more. We don't know. We suspect that I now suspect this man came in through the back. What is crucial about this is that Amy was shot twice. All the girls were shot with a 22 to the back of the head, except Amy. The 22 shot is on top of the head, right? And then she's later shot with a 380. So the reason she's apart is because we suspect that these 4 kids were lined up on their knees, facing away. They were facing the shelves and the door, and he just fired. He went right after him. Amy was probably the last one, so she was able to react, and she probably moved her head. So that's why she shot here and not in the back of the head.
Yeah.
And so, but that would have knocked her out. That the idea that Amy struggled or fought, no, because that's like hitting somebody with a bat.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so she was knocked out, but she was alive. And so then he tried to strangle her. That's why her DNA appears right on the left side of the office on the outside wall. And you could, so because she's bleeding, so her DNA is kind of spread along the area where the little red dots are.
Mhm.
Um,
What do the little blue dots signify? What are these? What
those are the cups.
the cups. Okay.
Yeah. So the red dots on there by where Amy is at, that's her blood, and it's also on the wall. So she's bleeding, and that's where her DNA, that because he's trying to strangle her. And when that didn't work, then he flipped her over and he shot her in the back of the head, and the bullet came out of her cheek, and the cartridge ended up in the drain. The blue cups are from the other room. If you can see in the bottom to the left, there's some that are outlined in black, and then there's some that are not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where they used to be because of the fire suppression. This stuff ended up everywhere. The state said, "Oh, this is where they were trying to use for fire." That's just not true, right? But that's pretty much the crime scene as you found it. Now, one thing I did want to point out. If you notice the girl in the middle, she's face up, right? Mm-hmm. And if you notice, they were tied with their hands behind their back. If you notice, her arm is extended in the back to her left arm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other girl, the furthest one to the bottom, her arm is extended to the right, okay? That's because we suspect that when Amy didn't die, when he had to shoot her twice, he went back and flipped them over to make sure that they had passed away, that they killed them. And that's why their arms are pulled to the side, because he would have grabbed it and they were face down and he flipped them over to check.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'll stop sharing.
So I think Travis answered in the chat, but so it was a lengthy trial. Yeah, it was.
Yes. I think we started in late July, maybe, and we think we finished about the middle of September.
Wow.
About 2 months or so.
I mean, how long did the jury deliberate?
They went out on a Friday, I think a Friday afternoon after closing arguments. And I can't remember. They came back, I think, on Monday, Sunday or Monday. I don't remember if they worked the weekend, but they were out for a long time, but not like you hear in television, like 5 days or something.
Yeah.
They came back probably in about 17 hours total, maybe something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, on a case where there was no evidence other than the confessions, the fact that it takes 3 weeks just kind of really exemplifies just how the state builds cases like this. I could imagine that it was day after day of them putting their cops on, putting their, crime scene people on, and just kind of building the scene, wringing the pathos out of the fact that these 4 beautiful little girls were killed. And then, at some point in time, they have to actually get to whatever evidence they have against your client. And I can't imagine that took too long.
No, they had this witness who came in. Her last name was Statham, but I can't remember her first name. I think it was Amanda. But but I'm not sure. But they had this witness come in, and her testimony was, "Oh yeah, I remember 8 years ago, and I was with Michael Scott at a party or somewhere where he said he did it, or worse to that effect,
Yeah.
or he was involved, or whatever it was." The girl's mom was like a wannabe comedian and it wanted to be in entertainment, so none of that was true. It was just made up. But that was kind of par for the course for this case. That was it. Like, other than the confession from Springsteen, that was basically it.
Yeah, I was rewatching that portion of the documentary with that woman on, talking about that today, where she said that, yeah, I was at some kind of party, and yeah, that's what she said. She said that he claimed that he did it, and that he started giving a bunch of details, but I can't remember any of them. And it's like you're sitting here watching this now, and it's interesting to kind of juxtapose the concept of watching that like within the last month, and then having this thing come down 2 days ago, where that they figured out who it was that had actually done it. Because when you you listen to the people talking, and it goes down the line from prosecutors or district attorneys to cops to the victims' families, everybody is still of the mindset up until 2 days ago that your client is one of the people that did this.
Right.
And that's the damage of wrongful convictions. It's like there's this concept that people just don't understand, that even when you're exonerated fully, there are still going to be people out in the world, especially in cases where they have not uncovered who actually did it.
Right.
In those cases, your client, if you walk a client out of prison is wrongfully convicted, there is a segment of society, and it may be larger than the segment of society that doesn't believe or that does believe that your client didn't do it and is willing to to move past that. I'd say that the segment that just still is stuck on the fact that, well, they were tried, a jury came back and found them guilty, they got off on a technicality, I still think they did it, and that's the part of it where we have to like really continue to try to educate people,
Well, like, I tried a case last week, a sex assault. We got an acquittal, got him not guilty on it. But the way we started jury selection was just with that, just talking about bias.
Yeah.
And I gave him a story about a time that I was biased towards a client I was appointed to, and I kind of was attacking the client at the first meeting, and the client said, "Hey, wait a minute. I didn't do this crime. It actually was a capital murder case, the one we got the acquittal on later on." And he said, Keith told me, he goes, "Hey, I didn't do this. And if you don't believe me, then get me a lawyer who does, because you're not helping me." And I was like, I was ashamed. I was embarrassed because I was a lot younger then. I had more hair and it was a different color, But the point was that even as a lawyer, I was presuming guilt, because I was reading a PC affidavit, a probable cause affidavit from the cop. The thing that we talked about last week with that panel was, hey, the presumption of innocence means something. And the burden of proof means something because it protects everybody. My observation has always been is that we have a presumption of guilt. That's when jurors come in, they presume guilt. We all do.
Yes. There's no question about it. And the other part of it with the concept of, because as Travis was telling you, I had gone to as an observer as opposed to being the attorney of record, but I went and observed this Richard Allen case, which was out in Indiana. It was 2017 case. It went cold for 5 years. They make an arrest of this guy who lived in town, who worked at the local CVS, no criminal background ever. And, it kind of comes out of the blue. And, they end up doing what's called a safekeeping. They get a safekeeping order. And in Indiana, that means that they're going to actually keep him as a pretrial detainee in prison. So they end up moving him out to the worst of the worst Westville prison out in Indiana. And they have him in solitary. They have him in the most secure cell in the most secure prison in the state of Indiana. As a pretrial detainee, he naturally loses his shit over 5.5 months periods. Like quite literally, he develops psychosis to the extent to where they actually administer Halidol involuntarily to him. But during that course of the time, he starts making these confessions. And so I'm at that trial, and the attorneys who I was friends with ended up retaining another false confession expert as well. And they were waffling on whether or not they were going to put him on, because, and it goes to that thing where I think if we asked 9 out of 10 people on the street, not on my channel because my people know better, but if we were to just walk out on the street and you were to ask, do you think there's such a thing as a false confession, that 9 out of 10 people would say no. Because from their own mind, what they're thinking is, I would never, there's not any set of circumstances in which I would confess to some horrible crime that I didn't commit. There's no way. And no one's ever going to tell me that I would. And trying to get people over that, talking about cognitive bias, which is really built out of their own mind, that they would never do it because they don't understand how it works, is really the toughest hurdle to get over in terms of trying to convince a jury that false confessions are in fact a thing.
Right.
And so as far as you, when you kind of figured out, you're like, all right, Tony, you're right. This dude did not do it. I'm on board with it. And and you're set that, like, because that goes from, like you said, you get those cases where you review the evidence and it's powerful and it seems apparent to you that they probably got it right. And at that point, you're going to your client, you're saying, look, this isn't like a silver tongue magic show here where I'm going to be able to go in and we're getting an acquittal on this thing. You're staring at the death penalty here, and they have very powerful evidence, which I don't think that we can rebut. Do you want me to go try to work with the state and get a plea worked out? And, so there's a huge shift in your mind when you go from there to where you're like, oh, fuck, man. Like I gotta put the work in right now because I'm dealing with an innocent guy here. And like, talk a little bit about that weight that you feel as an attorney when you come to that realization that that's what your reality is.
It's tough. All this took a huge toll on all of us, and the lawyers, the families, everybody, our kids and whatnot. My son's now in the military, and he says, I hate that case, because all these cases happened when these kids were between 12 and 15, 16 in that time period. So I'd be at home sitting at the kitchen table with a computer and a screen working, and I missed out with them because I was doing this. So the toll is heavy. You lose your practice. And then, like, I think for all of us, we felt for those families, because to me, it was like, we wanted them to see, is like, they're not telling you the truth.
Yes.
They've got the wrong people. They're lying to you. And man, we'd go into those, in this case, especially. The other one's not so bad, but this one, you'd go into court, and you'd sit there, and the gallery would be full of people, the press and so on. And you could just feel this presence of, number one, evil. And I could feel it anyway. It's like all this pressure and hatred towards my client.
Yeah.
Like we just, like, man. And I'll never forget, because one time we were in the middle of trial, and Dexter says to me, hey man, let me go back to the office. Let me go work on the cross for these other cops that are coming up, and you do the case. Right. And I was scared. Like I said, no, you can't do that. I said, you can't leave me, man. I said, no. I said, no, no.
Yeah.
And it was a fear, man. And it's hard to express the weight. and you get bumps right here in the back of your neck.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just, you get these balls here, they don't go away.
Yeah.
They don't go away. Like you're all stressed, man.
Yeah.
And it hurts. It's painful. It was rough. Today is the first time like I felt relief now. It's like,
Yeah,
we can move on.
yeah. It had to have been, I mean, for you, it had to have been astounding to hear. And I'm sure, I mean, did you let your client, did you let Michael know, or did he find out?
No, I mean, I haven't talked to Mike since 2009. I mean,
Wow.
I don't know where he's at. I have no idea where he's at. Springsteen, I think, is in West Virginia. He went back to West Virginia.
Yeah.
So he has his life over there. But I haven't talked to these guys. Maurice Pierce was killed by Austin Police Department.
Saw that.
That boy suffered from PTSD big time, because with him, the way Polanco treated him December 15th of 1991, that stuck with him. He ended up on probation for the gun and for a stolen car and whatever. And about 6 months later, 92, his probation, he had messed up, and his probation officer said, "Hey man, you need to behave on your probation for the car, whatever, because they're going to think you did it." And the kid just started crying. Right. And so they wrote it like it's in the report, Pierce reacted like just bawling when this juvenile probation officer is telling him, "Hey, you're going to be in trouble, and they're going to accuse you of that." That's how it affected this poor kid, and it followed him. And then Paul Johnson, who his ringtone, when we're looking at the evidence back in 2002, right before trial, his ringtone is the Lone Ranger. And it's like, that tells me a lot about you.
Speaking of which, he's the one that wrote the probable cause affidavit, and it's not long. Let's.
I mean, he pursued Pierce. He pursued Pierce from 1996, I want to say, or 97, all the way through 99. Just constant. Just never left him alone.
Man.
So what he says here is on December 6th at 2949 West Anderson Lane, Austin, Travis County, Texas. Robert Springsteen Jr. and the other two names are redacted here. Michael James Scott and redacted committed the offense of capital murder by intentionally causing the death of Amy Ayers, Sarah Harbison, Jennifer Harbison, and Eliza Thomas during the course of committing a robbery. To wit, White, redacted, acted as the lookout outside of the store. Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott entered the I Can't Believe It's Yogurt shop and used handguns to threaten the employees while demanding money from the store, then shot and killed all four girls that had been in the store. My name is Paul Johnson. I am the detective of the Austin Police with the Austin Police Department Homicide Detail. I got the following information from Austin Police Offense Report number 91. And the rest of it.
You know what he doesn't tell you, for example? Like, he took this, just like the Lone Ranger, he took the case on himself to reorganize it. And good for him. He did all that part. But like in December 98, he had that gun retested by the APD ballistics guy, Calvin Story. So like January the 3rd or so of 1999, Calvin Story says, "Hey, not the gun. This is not the gun.
Right.
This is not the 22." Again, because they've already been told 8 years before that's not the gun. Paul Johnson didn't put that in his report.
Right.
All right. It was not until I think the boys had been arrested that one of the lawyers, defense lawyers, caught him in that he excluded that and caught him with that. And the response, "Oh, I forgot. I'm so sorry." And he went and wrote a blurb about that. That's what they were doing. I mean, they were just cheating. They were lying. It was just tunnel vision. Like, if it doesn't fit our theory, we're not going to talk about it. So we're not going to put something in the report that says that the 22 doesn't match because it doesn't fit the theory.
Right. Although they put in plenty of facts about the 22. They start out on 12/6/91, Jennifer Harbison, 17 years of age, and Eliza Thomas, 17 years of age, were working at the I Can't Believe It's Yogurt shop. Again, they provide the address. The shop was scheduled to close at 11 p.m. Before closing, Jennifer's sister, Sarah Harbison, 15 years of age, and Sarah's friend, Amy Ayers, 13 years of age, came to the shop to help clean up and then ride home with Jennifer. At 11:47 p.m., an Austin police officer saw that the I Can't Believe It's Yogurt shop was on fire and called the fire department. Firefighters arrived to put the fire out. When they put the fire out, they discovered 4 bodies inside: Eliza, Jennifer, Sarah, and Amy. Autopsies were performed, and the medical examiner ruled the deaths homicide. And even though the bodies had been burned, he determined that each girl had died as a result of being shot in the head. The police investigators found that the closed sign was up and the front door was locked. The money that should have been in the cash register was missing. Each of the girls was shot in the head with a .22 caliber weapon, and Amy Ayers was shot an additional time with a different caliber weapon. There is no .22 caliber shell casings found at the scene, so it is believed that the .22 was probably a revolver. A single shell casing of a semi-automatic type ammunition was found at the scene, so it is believed that the other weapon was a semi-automatic weapon. I got the following information from the Austin Police Department. Oh,
And you know how things work. Like leave it right there. Leave it right there. So
Okay.
Pierce is arrested on a Saturday night, I guess the 14th. I was off by a day. He's arrested on the 14th with this gun. And so he's part of a thing was, well, where were you last weekend, right? And so he says, well, on Sunday morning, from Saturday onto Sunday, he was walking by his house, close to his house. There's a Nissan dealership. And so he found a Nissan Pathfinder that had the keys in it. So he got in it and took off joyriding. And he went and picked up Springsteen and Scott and Wellborn. And all 4 boys took off on this joyride on Sunday morning, which would have been the 8th of December. So he's now relating something that happened the week before. That's why eventually he'll get put on probation for the gun and for stealing a car. Right. But here's just so you can see where things can go wrong. When the police officer made the report, he got the wrong date on the report. He said that the car was stolen on the 6th to the 7th. That was wrong. It was the following day, the 8th, right? 7 to 8. When Johnson goes back to go look at these reports, he wasn't there in 91. So he sees, let me back up. So DPS had put out a profile in December 91. And their profile said the offenders are probably youthful. They probably left town. They would be looking at the media or papers to see if they've been caught or somebody's mentioned them. But they would have left town. So Johnson's got this DPS profile in his head in 1996, 97. Well, who fit? When he read the report about Maurice Pierce, because that was a big one, right? That was a big person that they're looking at in 91.
Right, because he's the one that they found that weapon on.
With a gun and so on. So he sees that Pierce stole a car on between the 6th and the 7th overnight and left town, right? And so the other guys had said something about, they went on a joyride, they had bought a paper just because they're out of paper. When Johnson is looking at this information, he's thinking, I got my guys because they fit the profile. They're youthful. They took off because they don't want to be caught. They go joyriding. They're looking at the news. They bought a newspaper. That was a true statement, right? So that one mistake by one police officer, innocent police officer, had nothing to do with this. He just made an error. Paul Johnson took that not knowing it was an error and says, okay, I've got my guys. Because they fit the profile and they must have stolen the car on the 6th to leave town to skedaddle because, hey, they just killed these 4 girls.
Right.
I mean, that's how, like, there's little details. On Saturday night, Michael Scott, you know what he was doing? He was he was a Boy Scout, and he was working with his dad and other Boy Scout troop stuff, working on this big Indian headdress and watching Dances with the Wolves on Saturday night, the night after he supposedly murdered these 4 girls.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. so yeah.
Babe, you want to read the rest of this? The last.
No, I'm fine with it. I remembered that, so I wanted to let you know.
Oh, are you talking about the rest of the?
Yeah,
PC?
you got.
It's too small for me. I can't see.
Okay,
it.
so on December 14th, 91, around 6 p.m., and that's would be Pierce, but it's redacted, was arrested at North Cross Mall, unlawfully carrying a weapon while he was in the mall. He had a .22 revolver in the waistband of his pants. Detectives questioned about the gun, asked him where he was the night of the murders. During the questions, he told them that he had his gun, that his gun had been used in the murders, but he had loaned it to, and that name's redacted. Okay, Wellborn. And that night, and Wellborn had it at the time of the murders. Pierce also told detectives of what occurred inside the yogurt shop during the murders and said Wellborn had just told him those things. The police questioned Wellborn and Pierce. What?
Yeah, I think that was it.
Right. Okay, and the police... they assumed that both men were lying and that they had made up the whole story. Oh, he was saying that Pierce assumed that Wellborn was lying and had just made up the story. So then they go on to, on 9/14 of 99, Detective Manuel Fuentes took a written confession from Michael Scott. In the confession, Michael Scott admits that he and Robert Springsteen and the other 2 guys whose names are redacted had planned the robbery that evening and went in the business when the business was open to case the place and unlock the back door. They went back after it was closed, and while one of them waited in the car's lookout, the others went inside and unlocked the back door, stole the money from the store, and shot and killed the 4 girls inside. In his confession, Michael Scott gave details about the crime that should have been known only by the killers, including the items used as ligatures on the victims and placement of the victims' bodies. I'll pause there to see.
Yeah, that's where you guessed. That was the guessing games he played between 4:20 and 5 o'clock on Thursday the 9th.
Yeah.
And the back door, by the way, for some reason, they didn't take good pictures of the back door. But they're claiming that it was a thumb latch, like the ones that you turn.
Oh, yeah.
So the state's presentation was it was a thumb latch, right? Because that would make it easy for someone to go, hey man, we're going to go open the door, leave it open, and leave it cracked open so we can come back. But that was a key lock.
It was a bolt lock.
Yes, it was. And it's hard to see, but you can see it. Like I didn't put it up here, but you can see that there is no big little knob that you can turn.
Right.
Like they just made that up. But here's the important point. At trial, at least at ours, right? We had looked at all these pictures and we have figured out that the picture of the lock they had was the lock that was put in there after the fire. The next day. Okay. So they did have one with a latch like that, but it was all brassy. It was not burnt up.
Right.
So I'll never forget because I'm crossing the manager about this lock, right? And she just, under the state's thing, she just said, hey, yeah, it was one of these, right? And they had shown a picture or whatever. And so I go back after her, and Dexter calls me. He goes, hey, Smith is saying he's showing me something over there, and he says you need to cut it or he's gonna like hurt you with it, right? Like he's got some evidence out there. And I knew what it was. It was the photograph, right? Wow. So I went over to counsel table. I said, give me the exhibit. I need it. And so he gave it to me, and sure enough, it was the brass thing. So we introduced it, I think, into evidence and went through this whole thing I just told you, where we asked the manager, hey, this was not the lock.
Right.
This is a brand new lock.
Right.
Why did you say it was the lock? You know, and that kind of thing. You know,
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff they did.
Wow.
I mean, here the stunning thing about this, and I think that it's a great way to highlight what we always talk about over here, which is this is a story. Like this PCA from beginning to end, aside from some of the factual scenarios about the way that the crime scene looked, is literally a work of fiction.
Yeah.
Baked up in some cop's head. And like that's the thing about cases that I'm always telling people. I'm like, look, the lawyers weren't there, meaning the prosecutor, the defense attorney was not there when the crime was committed, and neither were the cops. So when you have the state coming forward with their theory of the case, it's nothing more than that, a theory. And now we know, thanks to IgG and the DNA that was finally tested, that everything that we just read was literally a story that was cooked up by some cop trying to get somebody arrested on a case. And this isn't like it's some kind of rare occurrence.
Right.
This is what happens
It happens.
all the time.
And I'm going to take this down. This last paragraph just basically says that when they interviewed Robert Springsteen, he admitted to those same details. And that's it. No other evidence, no other allegations, as Bob was saying.
So ultimately, who tried the first case? And I know it didn't actually make it to trial. Like, who were the prosecutors on it initially?
So both cases were tried by the same lawyers for the state. So the lead prosecutor was their best lawyer, a guy named Robert Smith. Very smooth presenter. And then second chair was Darla Davis. And so they were the prosecutors in the first case with Springsteen, and they got the death penalty against Springsteen, right? So a year later, they try us, and it's the same prosecutors. There was a third prosecutor that helped out as well, but they were the main ones. Robert Smith, Darla Davis, they were the main ones. And so that's why we knew what they were up to, because we had the transcripts by then. So we knew what they were going to do throughout the trial. So because we went second, we were a little bit more ready because
the game plan. So did you handle the appellate work?
Oh no, I don't even know where to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that's for smart people, man.
It's a whole different piece, man. It's a whole different piece. Like Allie is smart enough to do both, and she does. But yeah, I wasn't an appellate guy either. But I mean, ultimately, when this thing gets overturned by the Supreme Court, did it go up to? Was it the Supreme Court in Texas or
no? It was the equivalent. It went to the Court of Criminal Appeals, and in Texas you have the Supreme Court that handles only civil. That's the top tier. And the Court of Criminal Appeals does only criminal, and it's the top tier for criminal cases.
Right.
So it got to, I can't remember if it was the CCA, but they reversed it. So it came to a new trial.
And again, it was because the Supreme Court had come down with the Crawford case, Maryland.
Yes, because the U.S. Supreme Court had ruled you can't do this.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. They used each guy's confession against each other.
Right. Without making them available to be cross-examined at trial.
Right.
Not calling them as witnesses.
Yeah.
The scary thing is, like, the scary thing to me is if they had tried Scott with just his confession and the girl saying, yeah, he said that would have been enough. He'd still be in the pen today. They didn't need the second one.
Right.
They really didn't.
You're exactly right. And I want that to like kind of resonate with people. Had they not done that, with the cross confessions being brought in, I think a cop testified to one of them, and the other one was actually like a paper document. Had they not used those, Michael Scott would still be sitting in prison today with new hope, with like just completely blossomed new hope that, oh my God, they got the right person. Now I'm going to get out. But he would have been in this entire period of time. But for that,
not with Springsteen, because they didn't have anything else on him.
Yeah.
But Scott would still be in jail.
Man.
Crazy. Springsteen, they only had Scott's confession.
And his own.
Right.
And his own. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to start to wrap it. like what is your message for the people out there? And like, just know that we are obviously Allie and I are both defense attorneys, and we are a defense attorney channel. So our crowds typically are very pro defense attorney. So it's probably like, I wish that I had a bunch of pro prosecutors in the crowd today, because that's who needs to hear the messages more often than the folks in my chat. But I mean, like, what were your takeaways from this? And I guess, and I'll leave it to Allie to ask a follow-up question, but in your estimation, what is the way to fix the system in terms of what we're dealing with wrongful convictions? I mean, I know it's kind of a big question, you know, but what would you like to see happen to try to kind of facilitate this process?
I think that's a great question, and it's a tough one to answer because it's complex.
It is.
Paul Johnson didn't set out to convict innocent people. The district attorney did not set out to convict innocent people. They didn't do that on purpose, right?
Right.
Now, there might be some that do that, but not these guys.
Right.
The reason they screwed it up was simply because they're human beings who prejudged, and because the emotions of a case affect your judgment. That's what it was. Cops wanted to solve this case so bad, and so I think police officers, especially detectives and people that do investigations like this, check your ego. Number one, check your ego, and follow the law. I mean, presume innocence,
Right.
and be willing to say, okay, I screwed up here. This is not making sense. So in order to do that, you have to have the kind of training of police officers, detectives, and others like them so that they do not prejudge,
Right.
to set their feelings aside. That's the kind of training that they need, right? Prosecutors, the same thing. And I'll be very frank with you. The thing that surprised me most about those initial prosecutors in this case was that, guys, if we can figure it out, so can you.
Right.
You're the smartest that office has got.
Right.
Right. And your objective here wasn't to see justice, it was to win.
Right.
Right. And so it's the same concept. Like, you have to be trained to step back, let the emotion to the side, and then just be analytical.
Right.
When you analyze a case as a detective or as a prosecutor or a defense lawyer, your objective is to take a look at the facts and only the facts and see where they lead you. One of the things they did not do, for example, we put together, the diagram I showed you, it actually has 4 or 5 different times from before the fire, from before anything happened. We attempted to figure out a sequence of events, like minute by minute, like this is what's happening.
Yeah.
They spent about $30,000 on a guy named Robert Keppel, who was I think an former FBI guy, profiler type person, who said, hey, first thing you all need to do is you all need to go and interview every single witness that was there, make a timeline of all the witnesses, of all the people, the customers.
Right.
They didn't do that. We did. Right. So we took his advice and we just did what he said. They didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something else. If you're going to interrogate somebody, number one, don't use Reid. Just don't. Use cognitive, type interviewing, like just open-ended and see where it takes you. The Reid method is just way too flawed, especially with the use of the false, evidence pulling.
Yeah.
Just don't use it. Right. So I think that detectives need to learn to do these kind of things where they're more objective, and where I see innocent people the most, where they got it wrong, sex assaults, child abuse cases, and then the worst cases. That's where you see, I think that's where I've seen the errors.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the emotion comes
Yes.
in and it colors the judgment.
Yep.
And so I think that's where you start. As far as the public, it's like, man, if you're called as a juror, follow the law. The presumption of innocence means something. I don't know what your law is, for example, in Illinois, but in Texas, it's innocent unless proven guilty. In some jurisdictions, like Oklahoma, it's until.
Right.
The word until is a prejudicial word. Until just means we're going to get there eventually.
Right.
Right.
It's like,
You know, it's just
right.
but think about it. The presumption of innocence should be unless. The Texas has it right for
100%.
once.
Yes.
You know, it's
Absolutely.
unless, you know, and so I think as potential jurors, man, you have a responsibility to just follow the law.
Yeah.
And put aside this prejudgment that we have.
And that getting people to understand the concept of presumption of innocence is the challenge. You know what I mean? Because it is that bias that we all address during our voir dire, and you know, we're always asking, like, look, are you walking into this courthouse today as a potential juror in this case already presupposing that this person is guilty, or they've done something wrong just by way of the fact that they're here, you know? And when you have honest people that are sitting and being questioned, you know, almost to a person, they'll say, yeah, you know, I mean, they're here for a reason. I mean, they must have done something wrong. You know what I mean? And so, like, that's our baseline. I mean, as attorneys, defense attorneys, that's where we're always starting from. But you're so right. Trying to get people to just really, really understand and envelop that concept of the presumption of innocence is everything in terms of trying to be able to move forward, because it really is a mindset. You know, if you're like, okay, you know, I'm coming in knowing that this person is innocent as they sit here, and I'm going to put the state to the test, and they're going to have to prove to me that this person is not. You know what I mean? But that starting point is everything, and it's sadly never where we start from as defense attorneys, you know.
And then, like, you know, like last week, for example, the lead detective did no investigation on a he said, she said case. And he could have done all these things to either corroborate him or her, right? But he didn't do any of it because he just believed her.
Right.
Right.
And
So
they don't want to look past.
Yeah. So we like, dude, you didn't check on the texting, you didn't check on the phone calls, who's calling who, whatever, right? But the best thing is that the DNA expert they had and the sane nurse that they had, all the professionals, right? Like, we crossed them about their job and how they're supposed to be thorough and detached and objective. And they'll all say the same thing: is you got to be objective. You got to be objective. And then you compare that against a cop who's clearly biased, and the jury see it. And if you've covered that in jury selection, man, now you got something to work with.
100%. All right, let me pull Travis pop back in here. All right, can you make us bigger again, Bay? Travis, you have anything to say to your friend? And Carlos, thank you so much for
I did want to say something. I had seen a question: what's going to happen to these guys?
Yeah.
I suspect, I'm hoping I'm answering the question correctly, but my guess is that at some point, I think this district attorney is going to exonerate them, and hopefully they'll get compensated.
Yes.
That's the answer to that question.
I hope so. Travis and Carlos, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
It's been wonderful. And just so you know, anytime you want to come and talk about lawyer stuff, we're your spot, you know. So, like, you got any cases you want to
let me know, man. You just come anytime you want.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It was really wonderful.
He can speak 2 hours about how to effectively determine whether someone can wrap their head around the presumption of innocence in your jury selection, in the Carlos method, which is Colorado method on steroids, but scaled questions, all this stuff. I use that in all of my trials, Carlos. It's
good.
You know, I mean, it's just so incredible what you did with it.
That's
the comments. Everybody's thanking you. They appreciate your time, Carlos, and really enjoyed your insight on it. They say, and they really enjoyed it. And
very good.
Again, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
You know, what's that nonprofit you're on, that violence network that you use non-traditional methods to minimize and hopefully eliminate violence? You told me about it, but I couldn't remember.
Oh, I remember. I used to be on it. I used to be on the board, but not anymore. I mean, I've been off it for a long, long time, but they were out there doing interviews of people that in jail and trying to show how, even people that are guilty and have been convicted, of how that affects their families. So it was kind of that kind of approach and getting stories. I can't remember the name off the top of my head.
But yeah, I remember now they did it with storytelling, you told me. So one other thing the three of you have in common, I think I have this right. You all are fairly new grandparents, 1 year or less, right?
Hey.
We're working on 5, brother.
Oh, wow.
We got 4 plus 1 on the way.
I love it.
Wow.
Congrats on that. Congrats
Yeah,
on that. We just
you
had our
too.
first grandchild. Yeah, it's wonderful.
It's
we don't
the
get to
best
see her enough. We don't get to see her enough, but it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's a wonderful
No,
thing. We want
cannot be
more.
bigger.
We want more. It's amazing. All right. Well, thank you for your time. You're a gentleman and a scholar, as I knew that you would be. And Travis, thank you so much for setting this up, my brother. You are also a gentleman and a scholar. And we look forward to seeing you guys again. And like I said, seriously, anytime that you've got a case or if you have an idea about something you think would make for great content, hit me up and
right.
we'll get you on. All right.
Very good. Thank you, guys.
All right.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Travis.
So, babe, we got to get through these stickers fast. I know you've got to go, but you have to answer this question because you know a lot more about the genetic genealogy timeframes. Haley Caroline says, do y'all know how long it takes to get results for genetic genealogy? Still don't know why they haven't. I guess I should have asked Carlos while we had him here, why they haven't done this for John Bonet. So glad these families finally have answers. Great show as always.
It depends on the lab. I mean, if you talk to Othram, they can get it done in a week. Like
Wow.
literally. And I'm talking about through the IgG portion of it as well. So, I mean, it really depends on the lab, but the technology, because back when they first started doing IgG, it was literally they would have to go through and do like actual family trees by hand, like where they didn't have access to all the information. Now, where we're at technology wise, it's so much faster. And it's a question that I'm going to ask. And I know that John Ramsey, because I'm going to be with him on Thursday along with Allie, why Boulder hasn't done it. Not only have they not done the IgG portion of it, they haven't even tested some of the evidence that exists still. So it's frustrating why they're not doing that in that case and others.
You'll have to check back with Bob next week after we do.
All right, I got to go though. Do you want to wrap it up with the folks?
Yep.
All right, I love you guys. I'm heading to Court TV if you're wondering why I got to go. I agreed to it on Friday. So, all right, I love you, babe. I love you guys. Bye.
Babe. So, Itch, thank you for your super sticker. Very generous. Deja Vu, member for 19 months. Thanks for your continued generosity. Aw, family hugs. History and Homicide, gifting a membership. Thank you. Thank you. Gigi, I put your comment up a couple times, so I'm sure that that Carlos had seen it, but Gigi says, I remember this when my family lived and went to school and church a few miles away from the yogurt shop. I was 28 with 5 children under 5. This was scary. I can only imagine. Horrifying. West Jojo gifted 20 Defense Diary memberships. Thank you. Thank you. Followed by Idiot Wind, also gifted 20 memberships. Thank you. Jennifer, thank you for your generosity. And Honey and Salt, I put your comment up a couple times, so I'm sure that Carlos saw it, but she said, thank you, Mr. Carlos, and bless our defense attorneys. Well, thank you. And Decline, lastly, said, you both are so appreciated for this live. We always think the law enforcement is right every time and think that defendant is always guilty without hearing all the evidence. Thank you. Well, thank you. And thank you all for joining us. To me, this case is a gem because it really shows there's so many times that people with false confessions are exonerated or, released because they find out they were coerced and it was and it's just a constitutional issue. But here they actually found the true killer a serial killer that has since committed suicide. So he will not be tried. But the gun that they found were that matched up with the gun used in this, as does his DNA, as does his MO. So this is a really, really important case for all of those people out there who just still think, no, I know this person's been exonerated, but I'm not buying it. I still think they're guilty. They confessed. Because you can have confessions when the person really didn't do it. So I just hope you guys can, think about that. And thank you all for being here. And we will see you soon. Thanks. Bye.